I gotta get my interview mode on. All right. Hejje Estongo, Mahin Wachahochov Kudos. My name is Sydney Gray, and I am a junior philosophy student at OU. So I'm actually come from a family that is kind of first generation city. The rest of my family's from kind of like the country area. Like my family's from Okmulgee and Henrietta, and that's where I go to like visit my family. And so my grandparents actually ended up moving to Tulsa whenever my mom was younger, and that's like where my parents met and stuff. And growing up in Tulsa was definitely different than what it was like for my grandparents growing up. And Tulsa is a very segregated place historically. And I went to school in the north side of Tulsa for most of my life, for middle school and high school. I went to Carver Middle School and Booker T. Washington High School, which were both historically implicated in the Tulsa race wars back in the early 1900s. And you can really see from the landscape of the town exactly how segregated it is, and where the food deserts are and who has access to what. The schools I went to were considered like good schools, but it was always like in a bad area. And I've lived in all kinds of different areas around Tulsa. I lived in like the west side of town for a long time. I lived in the parts that people always called Little Mexico, and then also experienced South Tulsa, where all of the more rich or affluent people live, especially white churchgoers definitely live closer to the south side of Tulsa. And all of it, the town is really segregated based on historical events. And Tulsa started out as a creek town, specifically. That's where my people came and settled and, you know, reestablished our different ceremonial grounds. And it's has like kind of like the center of like where our Orion tribe settled and established our new lands, and the capital is in Okmulgee. So I grew up kind of knowing all these facts and experienced a lot of different parts of the city that I grew up, and kind of like really identify like what had happened there and why it was like that contemporarily. So I think it really did kind of shape the way like I view Oklahoma history and how I view like, you know, the land I stand on here, like right now, just living in Oklahoma and living in Tulsa for most of my life and kind of experiencing that environment can really make you kind of aware of like what's happening, what's been happening and going on, and just like the consequences of like the history of these different places. Because my family was like, you have to go to college. So OU wasn't exactly, I mean, going to college in general wasn't exactly like my first choice. I didn't really want to go to OU initially, but I'm a first generation student. It was really important to my family that I do go to OU, or just go to college in general. So I basically just came to OU kind of out of necessity, kind of like a lot of other people do from Tulsa. So that's pretty much why I chose it. It's closer to home. I don't like to be far away from my family. I mean, it was kind of, again, a situation out of necessity, because Ashley and I just were like, we have these ideas for projects, we have like these goals in mind, and we want to work together, but people need like a name to call us. And initially, we had our friends Josh and Jesse help us out with like at least presenting the SGA legislature, and they were kind of implicated in that in the beginning, but we got a lot of blowback for what we were doing. So we said, you know, like Ashley and I were just like, all right, we'll take over and we'll just call like the project or ourselves Indigenize OU, because it's kind of easier for people to talk about it. Well, we started a lot of conversation around like the whole Boomer Sooner controversy that actually caused a serious uproar of people that just really didn't want to hear the history of Oklahoma, and kind of, you know, we wanted to like shed light on just how bad the sense that most Oklahomans have of the history of this land, and that the symptoms and just the consequences of settlement are definitely like still happening to this very day to a lot of people, but most people don't know the history of Oklahoma. And that says a lot about like our education system in Oklahoma, and just the anti-Indigenous sentiment here. And so, we were talking about that for a while, and since then we've held a couple actions on OU campus, including just things like marches, and we've hosted panels, discussions, and held a workshop. And we just typically kind of get invited to speak at different campus events or just like discussion panels. So we've done that, and then also outside of OU, we do a lot of community engagement, or at least attempt to, with Oklahoma City and Norman local government, on just various issues, but especially in dealing with the Plains All American Pipeline Company, which has been it's been a company that's we've had a lot of reoccurrences with, that have tried to install pipelines such as the Red River 2 pipeline and the Diamond pipeline. This company has shares in both of those pipelines, and so we've been present at meetings to pressure the pipeline companies and to get them to correspond more closely with different tribal representatives who and the pipeline is directly against their interests. So we've dealt with that on a local scale, and what's been happening next is that Ashley's been involved with organizing a camp called Okalawa that is a resistance camp against the Diamond Pipeline, and I'll be joining after the semester ends. So that's kind of what's happening right now, is a more direct action, because you're kind of sick of meeting after meeting and talking and marches. It wasn't really achieving anything. So we're going to end up moving closer and closer to the pipeline company on allotted Choctaw land, is where Okalawa is at right now. And so right now I'm just kind of trying to finish the semester, and then Ashley's already up there, and I will join her there, and we'll go from there. Well, my people, the whole reason why I'm here and why my family is here is because we were forced here on the Trail of Tears. Most tribes in Oklahoma were forcibly removed here or had to come here in like a refugee situation, because Oklahoma was initially Indian territory, and Oklahoma is actually a very new state. Oklahoma wasn't officially established until 1907. It's actually one of the newest states in the United States history, and that has a lot to do with settlement and removal, and just acts like the Curtis Act and the Dawes Commission. All of these things definitely led to our contemporary situations, and we're dealing with a lot of current issues that are so deeply rooted into what happened just 100 years ago. This is like in the living memories of a lot of our grandparents of a lot of this stuff happening. So all of this is so recent that you can't even really call it a part of the past. And the situation that we're dealing with here in Oklahoma is very dire as well, because Indian territory was largely settled because of oil, and so we have a serious environmental crisis in Oklahoma, and that's directly related to our people, to the way ceremonies are performed, down to the missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis, that these pipeline companies are not only, and just the oil and gas industry in general and fracking are not only ruining the health of the land here, but it's also ruining the health of the people, the water quality crises, and just and also the amount of man-made earthquakes in Oklahoma are absolutely devastating, and it's super unique to this state because of the recent histories of settlement and of the oil and gas industry taking over, and just most of our state's economy being built on that particular form of genocide is what it is. So Oklahoma is an incredibly unique place, and like you said, just due to the sheer number of like tribes that we have here, we have 36 federally recognized tribes, 39 federally recognized tribes in the state of Oklahoma. It's a lot. And so there's just a ton of people here, all like, all compressed together. And we have a lot of people that come from multiple nations in Oklahoma, lots of people representing a lot of tribes. And we have the second highest indigenous population in the US next to California. So there's just a lot of us in this really small space. And, Oklahoma is very targeted by these companies that are super detrimental to our land and to our people. So it's really urgent in Oklahoma specifically. Just like I said, because all of this is too recent to even call a part of the past. It's still happening, so.